Hi everyone, thanks for jumping onto today's video, which is a sample paragraph in response to a question on Sunset Boulevard. My name's Ben Taylor, and as part of the English Lab YouTube series that we're putting together for Sunset Boulevard, this is one of many videos that we're looking to really help you out with when it comes to your studying of this fantastic film for either your text response SAC or for the end of year exam. I really hope you get a lot from today's paragraph, whether it is some really tangible things like sentence starters, terms, phrases, quotes, or whether it is some more higher order things like ways of thinking about the text or ways in putting a whole paragraph together. Feel free to ask lots of questions down there in the comments. I love responding to those and helping people out with little questions that they might have about the paragraph and how it's been put together. This is one of the two sample paragraphs that appear in the English Lab's study guide for Sunset Boulevard, which can be downloaded from our website. It's a PDF file. It gets emailed to you directly upon purchase. You can check that out in the description to this video. Let's dive in. The first thing you'll see is the question that this is responding to. Joe's low opinion of himself plays a major part in his own downfall. And I'm sure that you have been prepared by your teacher with a range of different questions that might come to you. This is obviously a character-based question, clearly focused on Joe. What's important though is that we get to the real nitty-gritty about exactly what it's asking. It's obviously about his downfall, but it doesn't just say Joe undergoes a downfall, discuss. It talks about the fact that it's his low opinion of himself playing a major role in that. Sometimes students, when it comes to questions like this, they can fall into the temptation to say, yeah, that's right. Yeah, this does happen. Here, let me show you all this evidence that proves that that's the case. We want to do more than just that. We don't want to just say to the person who's asked us a question, be it our school for the SAC or the VCEA for the exam, and say, yeah, that's right. The premise of the question is correct. Here's everything that proves it. We want to show further thought, and we want to talk about other things that contribute, but ultimately we want to get back to our main key point. The second part to the question, as you can see there, to what extent do you agree? And of course, that means that somewhere on a scale between completely agreeing with absolutely everything in that sentiment or completely disagreeing with it, where are we here? And as part of our discussion, where do we land at a point of, okay, it's his low opinion of himself? What that means is that you have a bit of freedom to think about it. You're ultimately going to land somewhere with what you think, but you're allowed to explore as you get there. And that's what you want to be doing in a really effective essay. Being purposeful and being strong, but showing your thinking in how you arrived at where you did. Let's jump in and take a look at how this sample paragraph moves towards it. Joe's downfall begins with his own failings before being exacerbated by the actions of those around him. Now, straight away, we have a really clear, purposeful sentence to begin this paragraph. It's saying that, yep, of course, his downfall does begin with his own failings, but that's the other people around him that also contribute to it. So therefore, it's not just a one-dimensional answer saying, yeah, it's all his own fault and that's it. Okay, it's used a really good synonym there where it's talking about his own failings rather than a low opinion of himself. It's, playing with the idea a little bit, but it's purposeful, it's clear, and it's showing that it's going to arrive at a point whilst exploring a few other things. However, even amongst those whom Joe spends the final days of his life and the role they play in his eventual death, ultimately he is the most significant player in his own demise due to his desperation and low self-esteem. And so there we arrive at an even clearer point. It's clarifying exactly what this paragraph is going to be about and saying that, yep, while there might be other people that are involved, ultimately it is his own desperation and low self-esteem. If you've watched any of our other videos on the English Lab YouTube channel, you'll know that I love this word ultimately because it is used by people who are arriving at a point. It means that they have already looked at a few other things, but ultimately this is the one thing that they really want to say. You'll notice there that it talks about desperation and low self-esteem. What a great way of showing that I'm engaging with the question by using different synonyms for, a low opinion of himself. Wilder presents a cynical view of human nature. Great sentence opener, okay? Referring to the director, having a very analytical approach, not just talking about the character, but getting back to, okay, what is the director looking to achieve through this exploration of this character in this way? Rolder presents a cynical view of human nature through the lengths that most characters go to in order to fulfill their own desires. As Joe begins his time in Norma's house as a means to find stability through exploiting her obsession with herself, he comes to be the one who is exploited by her. Now, I'll just point out that this sentence here is not achieving a whole lot in terms of answering the question. It is not a short little succinct quote, but it is setting me up for what I'm going to say later. It probably borders on explaining the text a little bit. I would argue, though, that the language there saying, exploiting her obsession with herself and so on is just showing that deep understanding and showing a really solid understanding of the text. But it does, perhaps, if it kept going like that, would be heading towards, explanation of the text instead of analysis of the text, which we want to avoid. But let's see where we go with it, because that sentence doesn't just appear and then have no relevance later on. Both Max and Norma wield a subtle sense of control over Joe and his actions, calling him back from his New Year's Eve party and quickly manipulating into seeing himself as crucial to Norma's well-being. It is Joe's lack of self-esteem and poor opinion of himself and his prospects that allows this to continue throughout the film before he attempts to leave. And so those sentences are now culminating and reaching a point where it's, okay, all of this evidence about the New Year's Eve party, the manipulation, how Joe thinks he's going to manipulate the situation but ends up being the one being manipulated himself, it's all leading to a point. And then this next sentence begins with the word thus. Thus, whilst he is able to eventually find his dignity and accept what he must do to redeem himself and his pride, his initial insecurity and lack of belief in himself is what leads him to the circumstances that see him entrapped by Norma. If we just highlight this sentence, and if you just asked me the question up the top here and I just gave you that sentence, I'd say that that's a pretty direct response to exactly what that question's asking. It is a strategy used by a bunch of students. It doesn't have to be at this point of the paragraph, but a strategy to keep them on track sometimes is to make sure that they're always heading towards sentences like this, where they are reminding themselves as much as they are reminding the assessor or their teacher that, yep, I haven't lost sight of what this question was asking. I've used all this evidence that was relevant, but I'm coming to the point here where I'm saying this is exactly what I'm saying in response to the question. It can be a really good thing for you to practice doing in your practice paragraphs to make sure that you're being very purposeful in your work. Wilder uses Betty as a possibility for Joe to not just succeed, but to find contentment within his own life. His quip that he constantly hates himself carries sinister undertones as Betty laughs off his cynicism. Betty could be seen as one of the only characters who wants more for Joe. However, he ultimately refuses a future with her due to his lack of self-belief and his desire to finally act with pride and dignity. Tragically, it is too late for Joe as he comes to see how his poor opinion of himself and his low sense of self-worth leads him into a world where he is taken advantage of and ultimately murdered. Whilst there are others who definitely play their part in his demise, at the root of it all are the choices Joe must make due to his lack of belief and trust in himself and what he is capable of. And so in that final sentence there, you can see that one thing this paragraph does is that it does not let go of what the question has asked. It is by no means a perfect paragraph. There are things that it could do a little bit better, but one thing that really shines through in this paragraph is latching on to a response to the question and not letting go of that. Take a look through the rest of it. Please let me know if you do have any questions or anything perhaps that you'd like to add to the paragraph or you'd like to see or something you think could be done a little bit better. We have a range of videos on the English Lab YouTube channel. Please jump on there and have a look. Make sure you ask lots of questions in the comments. All the best for your study of this great film when it comes to the SAC and the exam. Good luck.